Version 1.3's third tower reset is here, and it's safe to say that this lineup of floors and bosses are some of the most annoying we've had yet. Teleportation? We've got that. High-speed motorcycle chases? That too. And flight? Couldn't forget it. With that, welcome back to my series where I'll be focusing on Wuthering Waves' recurring endgame mode, the Hazard Tower. As one of the main sources of astrites and best measures of your account's progression, clearing all of these stages with as many Doritos as possible is one of the greatest achievements any player can make on their account. And I've taken the time to tackle this content with a wide variety of teams and free-to-play options to give you all an informed overview of what to expect. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Our third reset of the patch brought with it one new favored attribute, Electro, which has replaced Fusion on the right side of the tower, as well as Inferno Rider replacing the Wind Gorilla, and introducing its own set of problems for players. On the other hand, the left still favors Arrow, no doubt because of the current on-banner character Jian, and hasn't seen very many changes at all, with the fallacy of no return, or every Jinsei player's worst nightmare, serving as the final boss. The path leading up to these bosses through floors 1 to 3 are business as usual, with a big focus on saving energy across your DPS and sustain characters by clearing the first few stages solo. There aren't any big complications on the left side other than the second wave spawning a Light Crusher, which can be a pain to deal with until its stagger bar is broken, which can be hard to do in a one-man party. So bring along a second character like a sustain or a sub DPS if you're struggling a bit here. The right side, on the other hand, has some issues with its first 3 floors. The entire right side heavily focuses on buffing electro damage, but 2 out of its 4 floors have enemies with electro resistance. You'll do a surprisingly low amount of damage if you bring the side's intended characters, so keep that in mind if you're matching up with the side's attribute bonus, but are still struggling. Playing conservatively with your teams means that you only need 2 fully built ones, with each character consuming 4 energy on the final floor of either side, and 5 energy on the middle floors, for a total of 9 out of 10 to fully clear the tower. Just as long as you're able to cover the first 3 floors with other members of your roster. Starting off at the right side first, it's time to talk about the bosses. Inferno Rider is arguably one of the more difficult bosses to regularly clear in the tower. This boss has 2 different movesets spread across breaking its stagger bar, with their initial motorcycle mode having telegraphed but very delayed attacks, and some of the most deceptive patterns in the game. Breaking the boss will take them off their vehicle. Well, more accurately, they'll throw their motorcycle at you, so make sure to dodge it, and speed up their attacks while reducing their range and AoE. Breaking the boss a second time will actually break them for real, and they'll hop back onto their motorcycle at the end of this second break. This boss is particularly tricky because it has almost no downtime at all. You will realistically only break this boss a single time in every fight, because each of its 2 stagger bars are huge, and even with big concerto generators like Verena and Sanhua, this boss is either done by the time it's finally staggered or very close to it. On the flip side, this boss's health isn't particularly high, which makes this fight far less focused on concerto energy generation and instead more focused on dodging and the most efficient rotations possible to pump out damage. The key character for this fight is one most players should have access to, Zhongli Yao. His built-in time slowdown is one of the most powerful tools available for this boss. If they don't have any downtime because of their 2 stagger bars, you can just make some downtime with Zhongli's 4 built-in time slows. Combining this utility with his massive damage and mobility makes him the go-to pick. Another pick for the main DPS role is of course Calcharo. He deals very similar damage to Zhongli Yao, but with far more difficulty and far less utility. He's particularly hard to play against this boss due to the sheer volume of attacks Inferno Rider does, and Calcharo's massive DPS loss if he ever uses a dodge during his liberation. He's just a clunkier, harder to use version of Zhongli Yao with far more risks for the same rewards. These characters are the top picks for both their attributes and the floor bonuses, which focus on constant resonance skill casts and buffs to liberation damage, which both heavily benefit their kits. Yinlin is the go-to sub DPS for both of these lineups, along with either Shorekeeper or Verena as the support. But picks like Jianshin, Sanhua, and Yang Yang can work perfectly fine here as well if you don't have her. When it comes to off-attribute picks, pretty much any DPS that isn't Chong-Li or Encore will shine here. The left side, on the other hand, has a much bigger emphasis on breaking stagger bars and AoE grouping, which isn't a surprise at all considering it's specifically designed for Jian with its buffs to heavy attack after casting a Liberation. Starting off with 3 Exile Gunners and the Spectral Shielder, failing to group and damage these enemies will eat into your timer like crazy and make dealing with the actual boss impossible. Characters like Shorekeeper, Yang Yang, and Jian Xin are very effective as supporting ones. The fallacy spawns after this wave is slain and has 2 phases. One at the start where it simply uses its hammer for slow, large AoE attacks, and the second phase where it becomes him, teleporting around the battlefield with rapid, highly damaging attacks. The key to this fight is breaking the boss's stagger bar before it literally turns on the jets. Otherwise, even characters like Jian will have massive troubles even reaching and damaging this boss at all. This makes rapid concerto generators and repeated intro skills very effective to managing the timer and actually dealing damage. A combo that I found particularly effective was running Verena and Yang Yang as the supports, as Yang Yang can cover the grouping on the first set of enemies, while Verena has much faster rotations and more flexible ones than Shorekeeper. When it comes to the best DPS characters, Jian is the clear top pick. But if your Zhongli Yao is free, he's a fantastic option as well due to his fantastic grouping on the initial cast of his Liberation and his unmatched mobility when using his enhanced resonance skills. The middle tower, on the other hand, has seen very few changes from the last reset, with the main difference being the bosses switched around. The buffs are still heavily focused on healing and energy regeneration, granting bonuses to crit damage if you have a sustainer on your team. The Impermanence Heron is first up, and this boss is probably the easiest one across the entire reset. Despite its large sweeping attacks, it's one of the easiest bosses to dodge and damage in the game, with the only problem being its constant flying and tendency to nope out of your most damaging rotations. Any DPS character in the game that isn't Havoc Rover or Dan Jin works here, but the best picks are easily Chong-Li, Jinxie, and Zhongli Yao, characters that either chase down the Heron with minimal DPS loss, or simply burst them in short windows that don't allow them to dodge. I also don't recommend using Shorekeeper here, as the boss has a tendency to fly to the edge of the arena and outside the range of her Liberation. The next floor could frustrate a lot of players. A massive wave of exiles, followed by my pick for the most degenerate boss in the game, the Thundering Mephis. This floor pretty much requires grouping to effectively clear, but also has massive electro resistance. This means that Zhongli Yao, one of the best picks for a scenario like this in last week's tower, shouldn't be used. Jian is without a doubt the best pick here, as his grouping and auto parries work for almost every aspect of the fight. But combining a grouping sub-DPS like Yang Yang or Jian Xin with any other DPS other than Zhongli or Calcharo can yield some great results as well. Overall, this reset is actually significantly harder than the last, simply due to the swapped placement of some bosses and the replacement of easier ones like the Wind Gorilla. Zhongli is still the king of both bosses on either side, but struggles far more in the middle tower. But he's still one of the most valuable characters overall for this game mode. Be on the lookout for more content like this on future resets. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.